So I'm not gonna name the show, but I'm gonna quote a show that I'm not real sure is appropriate for a quote for church. But anyway, you'll know what show it is. That's right. If you know what show it is, it means you've been watching it. So I'm okay. The so the three greatest traitors in history: Benedict Arnold, Judas Iscariot, and Leonard Hofstadter. Anyway, so my that wasn't a great quote. You know, I said a quote. I didn't say it was going to be one you thought was good. The the so my topic today is about Judas Iscariot, and so just for a hoot, I don't know hoot, whatever you call it, not really. I asked AI to give me a list of all the verses in the Bible. And actually, because a lot of time on a topic like this, I'll go cut and paste a bunch of verses. I said, hey, get AI to do it for me. So I said, give me a list of all the verses and some contextual verses on Judas Iscariot. And it gave me the list of verses, and I said with the text. And he said it can't do the text because of copyright violations. I said, okay, give me the KJV, the King James Version. And it goes, I can't do it because of copyright violations. I said, no, that one's public domain. And it goes, oh, you're right. Here they are. So I thought that's interesting. So you can tell it to, when it's made a mistake. Actually, I think it could have given me the New King James as well, because their copyright lets you do portions of, you can quote parts of it. But anyway, that's beside the point. But anyway, so some of these are going to be King James, some of these are going to be New King James. But what I've done here is I've taken, of course, the Gospels have a good bit of overlap. So I have kind of paraphrased and merged together the various things, and I've tried to go in chronological order. So I can't tell you necessarily what what even chapter this is from, because I didn't put that on each verse. But anyway, so it starts off in, I've got Mark 3, Matthew 10, and Luke 6. And this is the first mention of him. But Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the sea, and a great multitude from all around. And he went up to the mountain and called to him to those he himself wanted. So in Mark 7, well, 7 there, it was saying that with his disciples, but that wasn't the 12 disciples. That was a group of anonymous disciples, because it says, and then he appointed 12 that they might be with him and that he might send them out to preach and to have power to heal sickness and to cast out demons. And then it lists 11 of them, and it says, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. And then they went into a house. But I wanted to point out that Judas, it doesn't say he didn't have these. So he had the ability through God to heal sickness and to cast out demons, just like all the disciples did. So he was a full-fledged disciple. As far as the other disciples knew, they very shocked when it was him, right? They didn't suspect him of being a spy the whole time. And then so in John 6, verse 70 and 71, maybe, but anyway, so in the verses preceding what I'm fixing to read, Jesus was telling the crowd kind of a spiritual point that was kind of going over their heads. They really weren't grasping it. But it was about he was the true man from heaven, and that they had to eat his flesh and drink his blood. And they got all into a big debate about what he's talking about. And then in verse 60, I've got here, it says, therefore, many of his disciples, again, that's not the 12, that's a group bigger than 12. When they heard this, they said, this is a hard saying. Who can understand it? And when Jesus knew in himself that his disciples complained about that, he goes, does this offend you? The words I speak to you are spirit and they are life. But there are some who don't believe. For Jesus knew from the beginning who wouldn't believe and who would betray him. And he said, well, nobody can come to me except my Father grant it, be granted by his Father. And then from that time forward, many of those disciples left, went back to their homes and stuff, and walked with him no more. And then Jesus said to the 12, so the 12 that did stay, um, did I not choose you, the 12, and one of you is a devil? He spoke, of course, of Judas Iscariot, son of Simon. Then in John 12, verses 4 and 6, I've got, and I got verse 12, so that came from another chapter. Then 6 days before the Passover, so that's getting close to the end here for Jesus' life, Jesus was with his 12 disciples, and he was at the home of Martha and Mary, and Lazarus, who he had resurrected, was there. And then that's where Mary took this very expensive oil and anointed Jesus' feet. And Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, and it adds this in there almost every time, the one who would betray him. I guess I can leave that, but it's a little funny. They say that almost every time. Hey, here's Dave Leavell, the guy who betrayed the. I mean, that's like his name. But anyway, and he goes, why was this not fragrant oil not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor? And then John's commentary on that is, well, he didn't say that because he was concerned about the poor. He kind of skimmed off the top of the treasury, and that's what he wanted it for. And it says, because he was a thief and had the money box, and he used to take what was put in it. I guess they didn't have good auditing since the other guys were surprised about that. So then this is getting down to right before the last Passover. And this is Matthew 26, Mark 14, and Luke 22. Then Satan entered into one of the 12, Judas, surnamed Iscariot, who went unto the chief priests and captains to determine how he might betray Jesus. I guess because Satan entered him and got him going. That's, I guess, his motivation. Now, suppose he was somewhat easily led because, hey, chance to get some money here. And Judas said to him, what will you give me, and I will deliver him to you? And they made a deal with him for 30 pieces of silver. And when the guys dealing with Judas heard it, it says they were glad and promised to give him the 30 pieces. And from that time, he sought opportunity to betray him. It just occurred to me, it doesn't say when he actually received the 30 pieces, or maybe it does. I didn't notice. But obviously he had it and threw it back at him, as we'll see later. Now I'm going to read Psalms 41:9 because the next verse refers back to it. So, and it says, even my own familiar friend in whom I trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted up his heel against me. And so back to the New Testament, in John, and some of this is from Matthew, but most of it's from John 13, verses 21 through 30. And then, so as the disciples did as Jesus directed them, they went and prepared the Passover. And he sat down with the 12. And this is back in John. I do not speak concerning all of you. I know whom I've chosen, but that the scripture may be fulfilled. And this is where he quotes Psalms. He who eats bread with me has lifted up his heel against me. Now I tell you before it comes, so when it comes to pass, you may believe that I am he. And so while they were eating, but toward the end of it, while they were wrapping up, and one says while it ended, the devil having already put into the heart of Judas to betray him. And then Jesus said, and he was very troubled in spirit, and said, truly, truly, I say to you that one of you will betray me. And the disciples were very shook up about that, and very sorrowful, and they kept asking, well, Lord, is it I? And Jesus told them, well, It is he to whom I give a sop, which I guess is a soaked piece of bread, the when I have dipped it. The the Son of Man indeed goes just as it is written of him. So in other words, Judas is fulfilling prophecy. But woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better if he had not been born. Then Judas, who was betraying him, said, Rabbi, is it I? And Jesus said to him, you said it, not me. And then he didn't say the not me part. The and when he had dipped the sop, he gave it to Judas. And after the sop, Satan entered him. I guess he had taken a break and came back. I don't know. But Satan entered him, and Jesus said to him, do what you do quickly. Now, the guys were pretty obtuse, I guess, because they're getting all these clues. They still don't know it's Judas. But no one knew at the table what, I guess because it's their friend and they trust him and you just don't see what's right there, right? You don't suspect. But I'm not sure why. But anyway, they didn't catch on. And they thought because Judas had the treasury bag that Jesus meant, hey, go buy the things we need to give to the poor or give, for the feast we're having. And obviously, just occurred to me that obviously talking about the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Um, and after he had received that piece of bread, he went out immediately, and it was night. And then Jesus, with his disciples, and it didn't say how many, but I think it was all 11, went to the Garden of Gethsemane. Um, and Judas knew the place because that's where they typically went. So he knew he was probably at the Garden of Gethsemane praying there. And 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 at the end of the prayer, while Jesus was, it says, while he yet spake, Judas came guiding a detachment of soldiers, some officials from the chief priests themselves, the Pharisees, scribes, and elders of the people. And it was a great multitude carrying torches, lanterns, swords, and clubs. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them, saying, whomever I shall kiss, the same is he. Arrest him and lead him away under guard. And so he came up. Actually, I got it slightly out of order. Well, maybe he did. He came up to Jesus, and Jesus said, hey, Judas, friend, what are you doing here? Are you betraying me with a kiss? And and this part is from John 18:4, because it's a little bit, I did it this way, so the order of events is not 100% clear to me. But Jesus, knowing what was going to happen, went out and asked them, the group, what do you want? Or who's it do you want? And they said, we're looking for Jesus of Nazareth. He goes, I am he, said Jesus. And Judas the traitor was standing there with him. When Jesus said, I am he, they drew back and fell to the ground, which is a detail I had forgotten all about. I forgot the group of soldiers got afraid when that happened. And then he asked them again. I can see it now. They're all dropped down. It's like, well, did you come for me or not? Who do you want? And they go, Jesus of Nazareth. And he goes, well, I told you I'm he. If you're looking for me, then let these men go, referring to his disciples. And this happened so that the words he had spoken will be fulfilled. I have not lost one of them that you gave me. And of course, then we have the incident of Peter with the sword. And then the troops took off Jesus. And then in Matthew 27, it's talking about then Judas, who had betrayed him, when he saw that Jesus was condemned, he repented himself. He brought again the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, saying, I have sinned in that I have betrayed the innocent blood. And they said, so? And so he threw down the pieces of silver in the temple and departed and went out and hanged himself. Then the chief priests picked the coins up and said, well, we can't use this money to put it back in the treasury. It's unlawful, since it's blood money. So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners, and that is why it's called the field of blood to this day. And then then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price set him by the people of Israel, and they used to buy the potter's field as the Lord commanded me. Okay, that's all the Gospels have to say about it. And then in Acts 1:16 through 20, it says, men and brethren, this scripture had to be fulfilled, which the Holy Spirit by the mouth of David spake before concerning Judas, and he's referring to Psalms, which was a guide to them that took Jesus. For he was numbered with us and had obtained part of this ministry. Now this man purchased a field with the reward of iniquity, and falling headlong, he burst asunder in the middle, and his bowels gushed out. I've read that other places say he fell, not necessarily headlong, but sideways. I forgot what the word for that is. But anyway, and it was known to the dwellers at Jerusalem, insomuch as that field is called their proper tongue, Aceladama, that is to say, field of blood. For it was written in the book of Psalms, let his habitation be desolate, and let no man dwell therein, and his bishopric let another take. And a couple of verses down, they said, and then, so that was the group of disciples and the people there with him, the 11 and the other people. He said, and they all prayed together, and they ended up choosing to take the part in ministry of Judas, who fell by transgression. And so they replaced him with Matthias, Matthias, I'm not sure. And he was numbered with the 11, so he was up there with 11. Yeah, I've got it where it says headlong. In the interlinear Greek says prone, so that's like laying down. And most translations do use the word headlong. However, it's a singular one word. It's falling headlong. It's just like one word. And the interlinear says it means to fall prone. All right, so the verses in Psalms that quoted were Psalm 69 and Psalms 109. And just to give you a gist of the context of that, in verse 16, Psalm 69 goes, hear me, O Lord, turn to me according to the multitude of your tender mercies. Don't hide your face from me, for I am in trouble. My adversaries are all before you. I looked for someone to take pity, but there was none. And for comforters I have found none. But they gave me gall for my food, and my thirst they gave vinegar to drink. Of course, that was a prophecy about Jesus, not Judas. But then a few verses down it says, and let your wrathful anger take hold of them, and let their dwelling place, and this is what was quoted, let their dwelling place be desolate, that no one live in their tents. And then a similar curse essentially on the betrayer is in Psalms 109. And it goes, for the mouth of the wicked have spoken against me a lying tongue. They have rewarded me evil for good and hated for my love. Set a wicked man over him, and let an accuser stand at his right hand. And when he is judged, let him be found guilty, and let his prayer become sin. And this is the verse that's quoted in the New Testament. And let his days be few, and another take his office. And then they get really vicious, and they start, let his children be fatherless, his wife a widow, his children continually vagabonds and beg, and it goes on from there. So they're really pouring on the curses there. Um, the Psalms is obviously. Um, and then the the other one that appears to it's a little hard to say, but another verse in the Old Testament that appears to look forward to Judas is in Zechariah 11, and it's in a little section called the Prophecy of Shepherds, and it's very reminiscent. And it says, Zechariah 11:13, and the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter, that pricely prince they set on me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them into the house of the Lord for the potter. And so, anyway, that's the wrap up of the verses about Judas. I really don't have a conclusion or a point, really, but I just thought it'd be interesting to go through that.